Okay, now let's talk about kipping. Now, the problem with kipping is that it feels and looks like a very unnatural movement. And so before you actually master it, everything is going to look and feel very, very awkward. My experience, though, is that once, even at white belts, at beginner's level, once people get it, then they have an enormous success in getting out of mount. So, very basic kipping mechanics. So, a kipping is a move that allows you almost to vibrate with your legs, as it were. So the way it looks in the end, it's something like this. It looks very ridiculous. As I said, very ridiculous. But this is extremely powerful to get out of mount. Now, how should you place your body? So the first thing that you want to do, there are a few ways to get in, is to start expanding, so bridging, and then contracting. You want to engage your core and have concave shoulders, and usually once you get better at this, you want to stay on the side. There's a lot of core involved in here. And now you want to pump your feet out and back and forth to generate this kipping motion. And if you do it correctly, you should be able to go 360. Okay? Why is this so good? Because it allows you to incrementally separate your partner's hips from yours. Okay? Biggest mistake that people make, either they don't engage their cores, so they stay with both shoulders on the ground and they just go up and down like this with the full back on the floor, and then doesn't do anything. Or they start swimming and just flapping the feet around, and everything becomes a disaster and it looks pretty ridiculous. So obviously you want to avoid that. In terms of when to kip, it's very important to learn when to kip, because up until now we've been talking about situations in which my partner was crowning my hips, so his weight was on top of my hips. Now, hip escape, inside elbow escape, knee elbow escape, they all work very well. Kipping, on the other hand, if I try to kip from here, it just looks ridiculous. It doesn't even start working. On the other hand, when my partner starts crowning my face, especially people, you see this especially at beginner's level, with strong cross faces that don't really do much apart from being a little bit uncomfortable. If I get inside elbow position, goes with the cross face. Now kipping becomes extremely easy because it allows me to bring my partner's body weight up there, okay? In any kipping motion, almost any kipping motion, there's a battle for head height involved. Now, obviously not head height relative to the ceiling, but rather head height relative to the mat. So you see now his head is lower than mine, okay? When it comes in reference to the mat, this plane, to the perpendicular, to the parallel plane to the mat, his head is lower than mine. When I start kipping, his head goes north and it goes higher than mine. So when I start kipping, you see how his head is going north more and more? That's what I want. Biggest mistake that people make is bench press. If I start just bench pressing from here, it's never going to go anywhere. What my hands and arms do is they guide his body weight up north, okay? So there are a couple of ways of kipping, okay? So now from basic to advanced. A very basic overhead kip. Situations in which I'm here, my partner is crowning my head, I bridge, contract. Already this creates a little bit of disconnection between my partner's hips and mine, and now I start kip, 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 knees come inside, and we're back to guard. Over shoulder hip. This is probably the one that you're going to be using the most. So situation in which, especially if my partner is trying to punch in an underhook, for example. Yeah, that's it. I start hitting a small bridge, so now he has to post. Boom. I bring my contraction in, and then I start kipping, and now we're back in this ashigarami situation where we were earlier. So once again, I'm going to show this again because this is probably the one you're going to use the most. You can do it with straight hip post or with cross hip post. Doesn't make much of a difference. Obviously with straight hip post, you're going to have more kind of, you're going to have more range to drive, but it's not going to be as strong, and you are into slippage probably or whatnot. With a cross hip post, you're not going to be able to drive quite as high because the limited movement, but you're not going to have any slippage problem because this is solid. It's a solid frame into your partner's hips. So I hit a small bridge, especially when he's punching in an underhook. Go, small bridge, and I'm in. Kip, kip, kip. And now I clear the cross space, and I'm back into my Ashigarami position. I can go into leg locks, I can start coming up, whatever the case might be. Now, moving forward, for those of you that are a little bit more advanced, you start having side-to-side kips. Now, this is where, with opponents that are pretty good at staying mounted, you start going to one side, and then you kip to the other side. A very good way of hitting this, you can do this from any position, but for this one it's particularly good, is instead of bridging and contracting, you can start using a pendulum motion with your legs. So knees together, pendulum, pendulum, and now you start hitting a kipping motion, your partner comes back, and now you hit a kipping motion in the other direction, and we're back to square one. So this is for those of you that are a little bit more advanced. Obviously you can bridge. I can bridge, go, kip, 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 he comes back, and kip, kip, kip in the other direction. It works just as well, but in my experience, if you use a pendulum motion, you're just going to be able to summon more power. So 1, 2, kip, 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 he comes back, kip, 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 out. Now the fourth, last one, there's more, but this is going to be enough, is not a side-to-side kip, but rather a side kip. So a side kip is a situation in which I'm fully on my side, and I'm kipping on the side, parallel to the floor. And I go 1, 2, 3, 4, until I can come out. When does this work the best? Very simple. Whenever I go into any of the other kipping positions and my partner reacts with a smart move. A smart move is to something on the line of posting with both hands on the floor and pushing his hips south. So if I start kipping, and now you see he's using his hands to push south. He's crowning my hips. Now this is where things come full circle. Because when he's pushing his weight into my hips, I could potentially switch back to a knee elbow escape. Now he goes up with his knee, and I switch back to an inside elbow escape. Or my partner pushes back, crowning my hips, and now I go into a side kip. So you see how things start coming full circle. My partner is crowning my head with his body weight. I go into a kip. Now he's crowning my hips. And now I go into a side kip.